So the spring 2021 season of anime is already back with some fire because we have the return of Shaman bringing that greatness. If you all never seen the OG, then you are definitely in for a treat because this show is definitely one of my all-time favorites. And so the episode itself it starts off very strong where we see the Asakura family. They are getting ready because one of the family members are about to give birth to some twins, and we see that the grandfather, this man is strengthening his resolve because he plans on killing, one of the twins because they are going to bring a great calamity, or they're just pretty much pretty evil. But we see now when he actually goes to attack the baby, it was already born with his spirit, and this spirit was so strong that it was exiled, 1,000 years ago, and it was actually born with the baby itself. That is actually some hardcore stuff right there. And we see now that not only can this infant spirit, kind of like low def the grandfather, but it also messed up the father as well. And so we see now that the spirit itself is kind of like it's kind of acting on its own in a sense, but it's definitely protecting its, its host, because we see now that now I can't recall if that was, the spirit itself talking, which I not sure if possible, but I think it is. But regardless, we see that the spirit or the baby itself, it was talking to them, telling that it was definitely going on the path to become the king, and he also felt like that his twin brother as well would go down the same path, and when the time is right, it would come back for him. But we see now that that evil baby is now gone, going to do his own thing, and we see that I guess you could call it, the good twin, it is now left in the care of his family. So fast forward, 13 years to the future, we see now that this little boy named Manta, which I kind of feel bad for, just because his frame is just so damn small compared to everybody else. It's so fucking weird. But regardless, we see him coming from cram school, and obviously, he wants to get home pretty quick, so he takes a shortcut through the cemetery. And right off the bat, we see that that he meets Yo, and off the rip, we can see that that Yo, or you have like however you want to say his name, he is very different because this man was like chilling in a cemetery, just having a good time with these spirits, and they're all quite friendly. But that definitely freaks Manta out, and this man just runs off. And I find that kind of weird because this man like knew about this shortcut before, and that was like really his. Well, that probably was the first time taking it, but we see now that he could also see the spirits as well. So the following day at school, he's telling all the friends about what he saw, but no one believes him. And then we see that you or Yo, he is now also transferred into that school because he is there to complete his shaman training because he wants to be the king as well. But when Manta brings it up, how this was the guy he was talking about, Yo just plays it off, talking about, how ghosts don't, really exist. And so right now, Manta wants to expose him because he's kind of salty that Yo kind of made him seem like, kind of crazy because no one believed in him when he was saying, how ghosts were real. So pretty much we had Manta follow him around all day, and Yo was just pretty much just chilling. Like we saw him after the bridge all day, just being one with nature, as he said so himself. But then we see how he wants to find out more information about this one spirit, Amidamaru. And when Manta tells him that they actually have, an exhibit for him in the museum, he goes there, and we see now that there's a sword that was there, and it's definitely not in the best shape. But we also see how we have a spirit there that was like, hanging over that sword because it was like filled with regret. And so we learn now how that spirit that was hanging over the sword was Mosuke. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But he was pretty much Aminomaru's best friend, and they grew up and they wanted to make their life better together. But regardless, now we see that this group of thugs led by Wooden Sword Ryu, and that was actually my boy. Honestly, I could probably say that he was definitely one of my favorite characters back in the OG because this man's hilarious. But pretty much him and his group of boys, they have now come to the cemetery to call trouble because not only is it close to, a store, but who would hang out the cemetery so they can make, all the noise that they want. But then we see now how one of the boys, had warned him how he would like stepping on the tombstone of Amidamaru, who was definitely a very fierce swordsman or samurai. back during his time. But of course, Ryu, he didn't care, and we see him now obliterate that tombstone. And so we see now how he heard about how some boy was hanging around in the cemetery, and with him now being their spot, there is no way he could allow that to keep happening. But then when we see Manta there, because he came to meet up with Yo, they confused him and they beat the brakes off of him. Like we see him now the following day with a black eye, broken arm, and it may even had some bandages around his head. So clearly, they definitely, like gave this man the hands. And so of course, you kind of let that happen because they were friends now, and so he dragged them back to the cemetery, and and when Yo confronted him, he gave them a warning how these guys were a bother and needed to leave. But of course, Ryu wasn't having that because he thought they were just some kid he could also beat up. But then we see now how Yo he actually gave Abitamaru the chance to get some payback, and we see him like utilize his shaman techniques. That spirit ball form and a spirit unity. That was actually pretty cool. Like and so we see now that when they became one, he used like some wooden stick. I forgot exactly what it was called, but I definitely know it had like some cravings and some carvings and writing on it. And we see him, like load up two of the punks. And this man didn't even have to attack Ryu. We see him now just put, I guess, the quote unquote sword in his face. And that was, enough to put so much fear into him. He became, like a statue. Like this man couldn't move. And we even see now how this man, cut off some of his hair. And so with the now being all scared, he, his boy, took him away, and we see now how how Yo told Manta his dream to become the Shaman King and be friends with all these spirits. And so right now when he wants to be friends with Amidamaru, he had to decline because he had a promise that he was keeping there that bound him to that one spot. And so then we get a flashback of how him and Mosuke, they had went to this one lord where where Mosuke had crafted this sword. It was definitely a very fine sword, and Minamaru was a very formidable samurai. So they thought from now on their lives could finally like really pick up, and they could no longer go back to that hell where where they were like starving for days on end. But instead, that Lord was kind of messed up because he didn't want Mosuke to make, another sword for anyone else. And so he actually wanted to have him killed. But the real messed part about that was he wanted Aminimaru to do that. And there is no way, that he could do that because that was like his best friend. And so there's no way he could kill him. And so he let him get away while also like living with that shame of letting down his Lord. And we see now that when all these men came there, to the to that one area now that's a cemetery, that was where his legend started because he had slayed 1,000 men before finally being tired enough for they could actually strike him down. And so afterwards, Yo actually helped him out by presenting him with the sword that Mosuke had wanted to have because that was like kind of like his last promise to him, where he was going to leave, but he was also going to craft the best sword in the world for him. And so now we got the little flashback in the museum where he had put Mosuke in that spirit ball form, and they became one, and we see now how he went to the closest like blacksmith shop, and they crafted and they forged that sword back into tip top shape, and that was actually pretty cool. Like I do wish that we could have saw that, but regardless, once he had the sword, he was definitely able to keep his word, and we see now that Mosuke, he had moved on, but Minamaru, he was now going to stay behind because of what Yo did for him and for his best friend. He was now going to serve him and make sure that all his ambition became a reality. So that was to me like that they were pretty dope. And then we see now that they were being watched by someone with a like some kind of like general looking spirit that was named of a bison or a basin. But overall, to me, the episode, it definitely stuck close to the original, which is definitely not a bad thing. I don't recall or not if the original showed that little bit where we saw the twins being born. I probably have to go back and like double check, but regardless, the episode was still very good. My only concern for this series right now is that I know it's going to be shorter than the original one was, but I'm not sure if that because the original did like a lot of filler or what. Cause I definitely know now, like 20 years later, they can definitely, emit everything. But yeah, so I definitely do think that I will, keep reviewing this series because I love Shaman King that much, and so hopefully you all will, will like it as well if you decide to check it out. But yeah, as always, you got to take it easy, and I will catch you all in the next one.